Right, so the lockdown has also had unintended consequences. The Deputy Minister for Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities in the Presidency, that's Professor Hlengiwe Mkhize, is concerned about incidents of gender-based violence, particularly against children. Since the lockdown, there's been an increase in the gender-based violence reported to police. The Deputy Minister is also angered about the killing of Simphiwe Sibeko, a 14-year-old girl from Dobsonville in Soweto, who was found in the bush in eMndeni extension, murdered, and could only be identifiable by her clothes and her birthmark. The Deputy Minister joins us now in studio for a bit more on these issues. Professor, thanks very much for your time. Welcome to Newsroom Africa.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
So, sadly, I mean, we've heard the President saying now at the beginning of this hour that, this moment has forced the state to expedite long-standing problems. Gender-based violence is certainly one of them. Do you think enough is being done to tackle this, given the current situation we're in?
I think enough has been done, especially when we had an emergency action plan where Parliament, the President led all opposition parties to prioritize gender-based violence. There has been some gains, but I think here we're talking about deep-seated problems in our society, what women or feminists call toxic patriarchal tendencies. So what we are saying is that during this time, when people are locked in their houses, there are high levels of frustrations, aggression. Some they are anxious about their tomorrow. And of course, an aggressive man will always take out that aggression to the most vulnerable, like women and children. And if you see now the trend is to not only sexually assault, but it's also to murder. So it's really a sad part of this gender-based violence we have been talking about, that for how long are we going to have to call for tougher sentences? People's lives are gone. It's not a question that life will be restored again and a person will resume her life and mature to adulthood, like this youngest, the recent case of Simphiwe we're talking about.
Right. You say we've made some gains. I'm interested to find out what some of those gains are, you think, and what lessons we can learn or leverage from the aspects that we are getting right.
During this lockdown, I personally got involved in one or two cases where women were calling us in terms of saying, this has happened, and in these police stations, people are not giving us the hearing we want. And, in the past, the police will take a clear position in support of a man. And many cases were not going through the system, mainly because of the casual approach to statement taking and so on. I mean, I was surprised with one of the cases where the police had made up a case in terms of saying, for us, this is a clear case of abduction. We are going to lock this man in. Remember, women suffered even with the Domestic Violence Act, as though there were difficulties with the act. It was not applicable. So I think the leadership, when the President took over the campaign and said, not under my leadership, not during this sixth administration, and mobilizing all opposition parties and coming up with emergency action plans, the National Steering Committee that worked, the Presidential Steering Committee that worked on the NSP, it had impact on key departments that were also not coming to the party to the satisfaction of victims.
And, it's funny because even during the President's sixth administration, sadly, we've seen some of the numbers go up. You allude to, sort of deep-rooted patriarchal tendencies. Even just the term itself, I can just, imagine it not being grasped in the ways that it's meant. Bring us to issues around, the education, even sometimes of people who find themselves being perpetrators. What else can we do differently insofar as that is concerned?
I still think, prevention, a lot has been said about men's groups, that we should re-socialize young people and so on. I mean, an educational program is a long term. You'll see benefits in the long term. But I think what women are looking for are decisive actions in terms of ensuring that those who have committed these crimes, they are held accountable. Of course, women have been calling for severe punishment. In our country, some they've been even calling for capital punishment. Some have been calling for castration of men. So you could see, people have gone to a point of saying, these people don't deserve to be amongst us.
Right.
That there is an extreme position. In my whole life, I've never heard women calling for such severe punishment.
And of course, they're going to be looking for leadership from all sectors of life, including from some ministers themselves. The example that ministers should be setting is very obvious, right? They shouldn't be found flouting these type of laws. What should be the minimum punishment against anybody who's found to be doing that, do you think, at that level?
Well, the Department of Justice have been looking at they've been looking at the amendments of the laws, and so I think we'll get clear guidance from them in terms of what is admissible in law. Remember, they're not going to just, sometimes we say no to bail application, but it depends on whether the legislation allows that. So that's why they've been looking at the review of the legislation. And so we'll be guided by them.
Should they be fired? Do you think? If a minister is found to be on the wrong side of the law insofar as this is concerned, do you think they should lose their job?
I suppose ministers, we all are fully aware that we are citizens. Nobody's above the law, nobody's above the Constitution, so we should be treated like all other citizens.
And, when it comes to the latest incident, and this is the latest known incident, right, of Simphiwe Sibeko, the 14-year-old from Soweto, what kind of resolution are you hoping for insofar as that is concerned? Obviously, the law will have to take its course, but given the fact that we've been here so many times and the nature in which she lost her life, what do you think justice would look like?
It's difficult to predict, but what I can say is really a challenge for South Africa. Remember, President Mandela took the issue of children's rights very seriously. Many people, many activists, they still have his T-shirt where he was saying, putting children first. And as a result, we're amongst the first countries to sign the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and even to rectify it immediately when he took office as the president. So we come a long way. The Children's Act had to be amended to make sure that the rights of children are protected in law. So now, and I can refer you to one of the work which was done by organizations then who are working on the ground on a daily basis, even today. The statistics is not good. The cases we see, they are cruel and brutal, but it has the graph. People have continued to abuse children, irrespective of all what has been done in terms of the UN Convention. There is awareness now, and I suppose we are seeing more cases going through the system as against the time when it was very difficult, even for children, to prove that this has happened to me. And also remember, it's done by family relatives, in the families, in some instances, well-known people, where even the mother of the child will say, you can't say that about your uncle, you can't say that about your father, because that's where we come from. We all depend on this person.
Right, and that even makes it more complex for people to come forward, which is why I think the next question is critical. If somebody feels incapacitated, right, they're in the situation, they're not sure what to do, there's no recourse at a local police station, what options, if any, do they have?
You know, we mustn't give up. This struggle has been too much, you know, against violence against children or gender-based violence. Given the support we have at the moment and the seriousness of the matter in terms from the president and heads of all political parties, it's a gain in a way. It used to be a battle, a struggle for women, but all of a sudden now we're at the phase where the country is saying never again. And for me, that's the opportunity to push for more. If it means looking at the laws of the country, looking at our constitution, and really saying, what are we saying? What kind of punishment can be meted out at the moment? Because the long-term aspects are long-term aspects.
Right.